Allah Azza wa Jal commands us in the Quran in regards to breaking our fasts when the time of Maghrib begins. Allah commands, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا, eat, drink, حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Eat, drink, until the light of dawn becomes clear for you in the darkness of the night for the time of Fajr. Allah is commanding us, when the time of Maghrib begins, you may eat, you may drink, whatever was prohibited during fasting specifically, now it has become permissible once the time of Maghrib begins. Allah clearly in this verse says, you're allowed to eat and drink until the time of Fajr. And Allah explains in this verse that the time of Fajr is when the darkness of the night is pitch black, and then the light of the sun penetrates that blackness, ruptures the darkness, and eventually that pitch blackness begins to lessen. That's when the time of Fajr begins. Now usually when you have the horizon and the sun is still to rise, when the sun is 18 degrees below astronomical twilight, that's when the rays of the sun begin to penetrate the blackness of the night. It doesn't immediately become readily light everywhere, but rather the blackness of the night, when it lessens, that is a sign that now the rays of the sun have penetrated the blackness of the night, the time of Fajr has begun. And this is when the sun is around 18 degrees, when the sun is 18 degrees below the horizon. For all of us to ensure that our fasts are valid, to be safe, a few minutes before, we all have prayer apps. In your prayer apps, ensure that the time of Fajr that is set is according to the 18 degree estimation, because that's when astronomical twilight begins. That's when the rays of the sun lessens the darkness of the night. So the night is pitch black, and when it lessens, that's proof that the sun has begun to penetrate the night. That's when the time of Fajr begins. We have to understand the Quran as a source is decisive. And this verse is decisive also in its meaning. Allah says you're allowed to eat and drink until the time of Fajr. Before the time of Fajr, cease eating and drinking. Because if the time of Fajr begins and you are eating and drinking, you have invalidated your fast. We have to understand one principle. When we understand a hadith, we have to recognize the Quran is a decisive source through and through. A hadith are not like that. There are some narrations that are decisive in their source, but there are many narrations that are not decisive in their source. So when we have something from the Quran that's decisive in its source, clear cut in its meaning, a hadith that we understand, especially when it's non-decisive in its source or non-decisive in its meaning, the hadith cannot be understood in a way that clashes with what the Quran is conveying to us explicitly. But rather, and this is where our scholarship, the great scholars of our tradition, this is where they express their utmost responsibility. They ensure that a hadith are understood in a way that is coherent with the Quran. They ensure tatbiq. They ensure that they reconcile all of these sources in a way in which the meaning is holistic. Our beloved messengers reported to have said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And sadly, this hadith has many of the masses misunderstanding what this hadith is conveying.